Hello. Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Can anyone at the back hear me? Thank you. Just got louder. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'll grab the aforementioned clicker, and if everyone's comfortable, we might get started once we turn down that little bit of music. And we're good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Andrew Hopper, and I'll be your MC briefly today. A little bit of housekeeping, not that you need it because you'll be riveted to what's coming up, but bathrooms are out the door, out the back, if you need them. But I don't expect anyone to move because this will be a very exciting presentation. And it's great to be here today to celebrate this milestone and launch two significant pieces of work. The Northern Territory Tourism Industry Strategy 2030, which really will guide the Territory towards a strong and sustainable tourism visitor economy over the next 10 years, and equally, and just as important, the Tourism NT brand. Next week, seminars will be held in Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, Katherine, Jabiru and Nhulunbuy to share with industry what is two very important pieces of work. And we need industry to be on the same page with us so we can maximise the outcomes. We certainly believe if we can do that, we will reach the goals that we've set for 2030. But to commence proceedings, I'm now pleased to welcome Minister for Tourism, Sport and Culture, the Honourable Lauren Moss.
Hi everybody, it's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning on Larrakia country, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, because it's always a privilege to be on Larrakia land, and what a beautiful part of the world we live in. Over my term so far as Tourism Minister, I've had the great pleasure of getting out and meeting quite a lot of you and hearing about your operations and your challenges and your aspirations, but your aspirations for the tourism industry more broadly. And I do firmly believe that as an industry, tourism in the Territory has got a lot to look forward to. As a government, we're certainly seeking to do our bit. We have increased investment in parks, in domestic and international marketing, in growing our incredible events and festivals, in developing our art and cultural offerings, because these are all really critical ingredients to making sure we're attracting people here and giving them a great experience when they do come. But they're also a really important part of why it's such a great place to live as well. It is an increasingly competitive global market, and it's absolutely critical that we keep our foot on the pedal when it comes to driving visitation across the Territory. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here today. We do believe that there's always more that we can do, and we are seeing really positive indicators that suggest that we're on the right track. In the year March to March 2019, 1.95 million visitors came to the Territory, and nearly half of these, about 47%, came for a holiday. This represented a 10% increase in holiday visitor numbers compared to the previous year. We saw high-yielding business events visitors rise by 25% in that period to 768,000 people. So there are positive trends, but there's always more to do. And I thank all of you for playing such an important role in making sure that we are seeing those trends upwards. That's why today's Tourism 2030 strategy is such an important part of the ongoing Turbocharging Tourism initiative. This has been a really important body of work to take stock of where we are and where the sector's at, but to make sure that we're setting a course for short, medium and long-term action and investment to make sure we continue to maximise the benefits that are flowing through to all of you as members of our sector and, of course, to the entire Territory community. But before I talk further about the strategy, I think it would be useful to provide a bit of a snapshot of some of the other things that are happening in other areas of our economy. So these are some of the other projects that are likely to bring people here to the Territory. Project Sea Dragon out at Lagoon Station will see 100,000 tonnes of black tiger prawns produced each year for export to Asian markets with processing facilities at Bynoe Harbour. It's a project that is expected to create 1,500 jobs and a number of ancillary business opportunities. There's currently a feasibility study under place into a methanol plant near Darwin, which will create 1,000 jobs throughout the construction period and up to 350 jobs ongoing after that. Last month, the Chief Minister announced the Territory Government will build North Australia's largest shiplift, which will transform local maritime services industry and create 400 ongoing jobs, as well as injecting $260 million into the economy every year. We're also positioning the Northern Territory to play a role in the growing space economy, with NASA confirming it'll launch sounding rockets into space from the Arnhem Space Centre near Nhulunbuy next year, something I certainly never contemplated we might be standing up and talking about in 2019 here in the Territory. It's absolutely fascinating and exciting opportunities ahead. The government's awarded major project status to Sun Cable's Australia-Singapore Power Link, with its 20 billion, 10 gigawatt solar farm and storage facility near Tennant Creek. This would be the largest solar farm development in the world. And meanwhile, a new investment territory team has been established under the direction of the Chief Minister to lead a whole of government push to attract and secure private investment in the Territory. Now, that's a part of government that has a very clear mandate, and that's about lifting the Territory's growth rate from an average of 2.5% to 5%, and $1 billion to the Territory economy and creating thousands of jobs. So from solar to space to aquaculture, agriculture, mining, and of course, the tourism industry that we're all here to talk about today, the Territory's future is looking bright, and we are in a prime position to reap significant flow-on benefits thanks to increased visitation. So getting back to those holiday visitors that I was talking about earlier, we are already starting to see the benefits of increased focus and investment. Our initial 2-year turbocharging tourism stimulus package aimed to return our visitor numbers to a healthy 6%, and we well and truly hit that target. In fact, it's already delivered 76,000 additional holiday bookings, which is 43% higher than our target of 53,000. We've seen new aviation services established, including Donghai's China Darwin service, additional Jetstar Asia and Silka Air services between Singapore and Darwin, new Virgin Australia services between Brisbane and Alice Springs and Darwin to Bali, and a new Qantas Darwin Uluru Adelaide service. We've seen a record 45 business events and conferences secured, most of them occurring this year, and injecting an additional estimated $32.8 million in delegate expenditure. Some of our major conference organisers are saying that the Turbocharging Tourism Bid Fund has been something that's directly contributed to the marked increase in business event activity, and I think that's something that we'll see continue. I've spoken before about our investment in lifting the standards of our visitor offerings in our beautiful parks and our natural attractions, and work is well underway on a number of those investments. The new George Brown Darwin Botanical Gardens Visitor Centre is due to open next month. Roadworks are underway to open up new camping grounds and swimming holes in Litchfield. The new Nipmuc Visitor Centre is open for business, and walking and biking enhancements are underway. And of course, we finally have a deal with federal government about investing in roads and the visitor facilities in Kakadu, which is something that is long overdue. Like members of the audience here, and I see many familiar faces who are down there in Canberra, we were down there earlier in the week talking to our federal counterparts about the need to prioritise Kakadu works as quickly as possible, and I know that that's a view that we all share. So with a range of immediate activities and initiatives rolling out, the Tourism 2030 strategy puts us on a longer-term path to prosperity. It does contain new ambitious targets of between some 2.5 to 3 million visitors, accounting for between $3 billion and $3.67 billion worth of expenditure by 2030. That equates to around 3,900 new tourism jobs by 2030. Out of this target, we aim to attract between 1.18 million and almost 1.5 million holiday visitors, spending $1.46 billion up to $1.79 billion. The strategy sets out a number of key areas of focus to help us drive that annual growth, including investment targets, a strengthened Aboriginal cultural tourism sector, ongoing strategic marketing, further developing our events calendar, better access to within the Territory, and raising awareness of the value of our tourism industry to our economy and to our community. Importantly, this strategy is a really good product and example of extensive consultation. It has had input from 200 individuals from across 90 local businesses. So thank you so much for being part of that process, because it very much has been co-led and co-designed with industry, recognising that having a thriving industry here is very much a joint effort, and thank you again for your passion and your advocacy. Complementing this strategy, earlier this year I did release the Territory's first ever long-term business event strategy with an aim of delivering a further $68 million in delegate expenditure to the Territory economy by 2030. That will remain a really firm focus for us going forward, recognising that it has really significant ongoing flow-on effects for a range of sectors, not only in tourism, but hospitality, retail, accommodation, transport and others. We are currently also finalising our first ever Aboriginal tourism development strategy. That will align with this 10-year plan, and it'll help us to achieve those 2030 targets, as well as making sure that Aboriginal Territorians can take up a much stronger role in the growing sector and see the benefits from that as well. A number of people have been really instrumental in providing leadership throughout the development of this strategy, including Michael Bridge, the chair of our Tourism Mentee Board, Dale McIver and Stephen Schwer from Tourism Central Australia, over here, Mike Scott and Glenn Hingley from Tourism Top End. I'm trying to find you here at the front. Oh, you're right in front of me. Really, thank you for your support and guidance throughout this process. I am going to hand over to Scott Lovett in a moment, who'll take you through the strategy in more detail. But before I do want to congratulate Tourism NT on delivering the first action item out of the 2030 strategy, which is today's launch of our refreshed Tourism NT brand. It's the result of really robust research and testing, and it positions the Northern Territory as a place that connects deeply with people, awakening every sense. And it really does put people at the forefront, and it's been an amazing body of work. So I do thank the team. I know it's been a long process. But as I mentioned earlier, we're operating in such a competitive global market, and what this brand does is it puts us out front when it comes to meeting the contemporary needs and behaviours of consumers. We know it resonates with people who are thinking about travelling here. We know it resonates with us as locals. And it's a brand that sets us up over the next 10 years. It will help us move past some of those misconceptions that exist about the Territory and the challenges that we do continue to face in terms of marketing what is a wonderful part of Australia and ensuring that we're really playing up all of our strengths. Tony Cornby will be taking you through the work into that brand research, the rationale for it and how it'll be used across our campaigns. But I think it's a really fantastic way to kick off the next 10 years of tourism success. So thank you again for all of your contributions to this sector, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to grow our visitor market here in the Territory.
Thank you, Minister, and I'll take your feedback on board that you'd like some music next time to introduce and at the end. My apologies. Now, to keep the day moving, we've got Michael Bridge, the Chairman of Tourism NT, to come up and talk to us with a bit of an industry lens. Michael.
Thank you, Hops, and thank you, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to actually be launching what is my second long-term tourism visionary strategy, having launched the first one back in late 2012, first coming onto the board at that time. And as we transition from that Vision 2020 into what is this co-developed 2030 strategy, It's an opportune time to reflect on some of the significant changes we've seen across the industry over that period. The new strategy will set the foundation to address a number of key priority objectives alongside and in conjunction with industry over the next 10 years. During the consultation phase, many challenges have been discussed, workshopped and documented, and a plan addressed to resolve each. The changing global tourism dominance of Asia, the continued growth of low-cost carriers, Uber, Airbnb, and the changing dynamic of most of our international markets, including significant financial, security and political challenges that they find themselves in. Add to these the significant changes in distribution and distribution channels and the continued advancement of digitalisation and social media. And I don't just mean from a booking perspective, but also from a quality of experience perspective. It's having an incredible effect upon how tourists choose their various experiences. As the Minister mentioned, strong results were delivered as part of the Territory's previous long-term tourism plan, Vision 2020, which achieved an additional $325 million above our 2012 baseline when launched, which was $2.2 billion in overnight visitor expenditure. And having reached 1.5 million visitor overnights in the March 19 quarter, we exceeded the 1.7 million that same plan hoped to achieve. But as we all know, we need to keep attracting visitors in order to maintain these numbers. And we have to do that in what is an ever-changing global market. There are a number of subtle yet very important initiatives contained within the detail of this strategy. One of those is what we hope are much clearer KPIs that relate to the sectors of the visitor economy that the tourism industry can directly affect. We tend to talk total visitors or holiday visitors as though they are one and the same. However, we all know that's simply not the case. You'll see within the new strategy that we have tried to define that better so that each individual sector, as well as the agency, can be held more accountable. Another key initiative contained within this strategy is in addition to the annual scorecard, which will be reported in our annual report, there is a requirement to review and update the strategy every 3 years, again in conjunction with industry. This will not be a document that is placed on a shelf and therefore forgotten. This document commits all parties to various deliverables, and whilst we appreciate that the industry is ever changing, that change itself will not be an excuse for any under-delivery throughout the next decade. What has been rewarding in the last few years is the focus returning to the importance of tourism to the entire Northern Territory economy. And not just from the Northern Territory's government's perspective and funding of the various turbocharging packages, but from all sectors of the economy right across the Northern Territory. It's been a very long time since the entire community has been united with regards to the need to support and continue to develop our tourism industry. I'm hopeful that never again will this industry be set aside when a bigger, so-called better opportunity presents itself, as we've seen in the past with various major projects or emerging industries taking pride of place. I implore all levels of government to continue to recognise the value of tourism, to lock in the long-term funding required to give certainty to private enterprise to invest and to reinvest. In doing so, it will benefit all Territorians. With 1920 setting the benchmark for the next 10 years, I look forward to working with Tourism NT, the tourism industry, all different sectors of the Northern Territory government agencies, and achieving the ambitious goals set out in our 2030 strategy. I'd now like to welcome to the stage Michael Scott, Chair of Tourism Top End, from an industry perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Before we start, did everyone see the obvious mistake on the photo? Anybody can point that out? No? Nobody? I'm just checking to see you're all awake, because Michael has his left ear pierced, not his right. And blokes don't have pockets on the right-hand side, they have them on their left. So the picture was flipped.
I couldn't see.
And the reason that I'm not up there is apparently I have a very good head for radio. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The tourism industry and the NT government have been working closely to drive the Territory's tourism growth potential, with the NT government providing vital support through the turbocharging tourism investments and initiatives. The strategy has been co-developed between the NT government and industry and is one of the most widely consulted joint government industry strategies ever attempted, certainly the case here in the NT. In the short term, the NT's tourism industry strategy 2030 will focus on establishing and delivering renewed sector strategies and destination management plans throughout the regions, launching the refreshed whole of territory tourism brand, which has a huge amount of science, consultation, and relates to other strategies such as Boundless Possible and Tourism Australia's. And is leading product development, a cornerstone for enhancing visitor experience in a competitive national and international tourism landscape. The strategy recognises that the industry continues to face some major challenges in the coming years, something we in this room are currently experiencing. However, I'm now more confident that both the government and the industry not only now recognise those challenges, but also have a plan to address each and every one in an effort to get our enterprises and industry back on track. In the top end, we have the rejuvenation of Kakadu, which has been a long-suffering tourist icon that probably disappoints most of us in the room and probably many visitors. And this area has seen underinvestment for nearly 2 decades, resulting in a subsequent deterioration of their visitor numbers. The real challenge with Kakadu is that it's been predominantly the international visitors that have shied away, with numbers estimated to have been reduced by up to 80% since the heydays of the late 1980s, losing some 120,000 international visitors to the top end. I don't think we have Darryl Tutty in the room, is he? He's not. If he was, he'd be restrained by now. And international visitors to Australia are traditionally higher spending and stay longer than their domestic counterparts. Whilst we are still a few years away on returning Kakadu to its former glory, we are now seeing results with new investment and initiatives now starting to roll out. I cannot emphasise just how important this investment is to the entire top end, not just for those of us in tourism, and the flow-on effects and benefits will be massive. Whilst our hotels and airlines in the top end certainly aren't yelling from the rooftops how good the current trading conditions are, and those two aspects are the prime movers for attracting visitors, the fact we now have more affordable airlines and hotel rooms will assist in boosting our visitor numbers. We are working with all key stakeholders to ensure they remain committed to the post-impacts tourism-led economic recovery. The holiday visitor numbers will grow, and in turn, so will their return on their investment. Thank you.
Thank you to the two Michaels. Now we're going to move into talking about the strategy. So the Executive General Manager of Industry Development, who has led this project with his team, will come up and talk us through it. Scott Lovett.
I'll get that photo off the screen. Thanks, Minister and respective chairs. A great turnout. I know you're all here to see the strategy. You don't want to see the brand. You're all very invested in the strategy. So bear with me. This is a really important piece of work I've got to share with you today. It's been roughly a 12-month journey, similar to the time that the brand has been in development. We've had extensive consultation, as the Minister and Michael alluded to in their speeches. We were up and down the track. We spoke to our national partners. We did sector-specific workshops. We spoke to industry groups. We spoke to Tourism Australia. We spoke to our consumers. And we also had an online portal. So the level of consultation that's been undertaken in this strategy is unprecedented for the agency. And our partners, Adele and co at Deloitte, tell us, who helped us in this project, that this was consultation on a scale similar to what Destination New South Wales has done. So feel very confident that what is up here today is truly a reflection of what you, our industry, what we as an agency and wider government is thinking, and also our consumers. To that end, I would like to also add my thanks to my team, Valerie Smith and her team, who led this with me so well, and also to Adele from Deloitte, the national partner for tourism for Deloitte. So in the consultation, what did you guys, the industry, tell us? What was our strengths? What came through really strongly was natural landscapes was key and critical. You believed that people came here to see the beautiful, wide open landscapes that we have today. You also believe that Aboriginal culture is inherently really strong in the Northern Territory, and that was something we did in spades. They were the two primaries that really came through in the research. But the other interesting part was that there was an incredible diversity of what people thought about the destination, and that's not unsurprising given we're going from Central Australia all the way to the tropics. So, but everyone brought something quite different to the table in terms of what they thought the Northern Territory tourism product's strengths were. So that was really important. Then we had to have a look at what our consumers were saying. As Tony will talk about in a little bit in his speech, we run this piece of research called the Market Tracking Survey. It gets released quarterly, and it basically produces a net promoter score. So we survey a whole range of people who are looking at some point in time in the next 12 to 24 months to come to to take a holiday. And we ask them, what do you think about the Northern Territory? Would you come to the Northern Territory? They may have been here or they may have not been here previously. So obviously the NPS score itself, you can see up there, is an index. And basically the higher the score, the more likely they are to visit. So you can see we're challenged from a market perspective in our youth sector. That will be no surprise to any of you in this room. Australia nationally is challenged in the youth market. We are not as sexy in a market comparison perspective as other South American destinations, even North America, Asia, etc. For the Northern Territory, we're really challenged in that area in terms of market perception. When you move along the scope a little bit and you see the 30 to 49-year-olds, they're more satisfied. But an NPS and destination lands, an NPS score of 30 or above, you're going okay. So they're just satisfied. So in their minds and their thinking, when they're sitting in Western Sydney and they're going, where am I going to go next on my holiday? We're in the consideration set, but we're not exactly blowing them away. And then over on the far right there, we have the over 50s. They are the most satisfied. And in terms of an NPS score, 57 is actually very good. So that is the cohort of people who are absolutely excited to get to the Northern Territory. It'll be no surprise to any of you that 2/5 of our market is over 50. So this is the travelling demographic that is currently coming to the Northern Territory. So this illustrates an enormous opportunity, and you will see with Tony and his presentation, we are really making the pitch to our younger, next generation travellers to come here. But it's not all about marketing. And yes, I work in the supply side, I don't work with the arts and crafts team, but I would argue that supply side, I had to get one arts and crafts in. I would argue we're on a supply side revolution. So we need to get our product and our experiences right. And you'll see that come through in the strategy. Then we took our TripAdvisor rankings and we said, okay, so MTS is people who may or may not have been here before. It's not about satisfaction of the destination. TripAdvisor is. This is people who have been here, who've taken the time to write a review. Say what you will about TripAdvisor, but it's people pay attention to it. So you can see there that, and I should explain that in the attraction section, which is the red bar, attractions includes tours, man-made attractions, and also our national parks estate. So we're generally pretty good. We're at the top. We're pretty much at the top of the tree in that space. People are generally satisfied. So this is quality, and it's also price. That's a big factor in all of this as well. So then you come to our restaurant, which is restaurants, which is cafes, which is roadhouses. We're at the bottom of the pack in terms of that space. We know food is really important to the future travellers' needs. It comes up number three internationally and number 4 domestically as the main reason why people will choose a destination. Food is in their consciousness. Accommodation, which includes hotels, caravan parks, etc., is last by a long way. So this illustrates some real opportunity for us. And that's why programs like VEEP are out. That's why we're doing destination visitor satisfaction surveying constantly. That's why we're working with all of our partners across the board in terms of helping them understand the market better, market needs, market expectations, so we can lift these results. In STO land, State Tourism Office land, we look at Tasmania and Western Australia at the moment with a bit of envy. They've got the numbers which are really driving some significant growth. Have a look at the TripAdvisor rankings for Tasmania and Western Australia. It's no coincidence that they're ranking high, performing well in visitation. Why does all that matter? Because the number one influence, I'm not telling you people anything you don't know, the number one influence on travel destinations are family and friends. So we can throw hundreds of millions of dollars at marketing campaigns, and yes, it will make a difference, but what's really going to move the dial is getting products and experiences that meet the needs of our future consumer. Let's have a look at the road to 2020. We've talked a little bit about this in the opening speeches. So the top purple line is total visitation, the grey line is domestic, and the red line is international. So you can see the dotted lines that are plotted there were the targets that were set out for Tourism Vision 2020. As it was a total visitation expenditure number that was put out, and that was $2.2 billion. We exceeded that very early in the piece. That is now sitting at roughly $2.4 billion in visitor expenditure. You can see there the enormous spike there. We've spoken about that already today. It's in our consciousness up here all the time. You know, this is impacts. This is the result of an enormous resource project, a $50-odd billion resource project, coming in and driving 10,000 workers daily through our destination. We also had a methodological change in the way we surveyed, with this way the Australian government surveyed our numbers. But whilst IMPEX was there, you can see the impact of Turbo has come in the last 18 months. So we have driven significant gain, particularly in domestic, on the back of the great work that you guys do in industry, and the great work that our team is doing in terms of its marketing to the consumers. One thing that I do want to highlight is the international line. This is really difficult. We get less tourists, international visitors today than we did in 2005. Let's let that sink in for a second. For a number of reasons. But we haven't yet moved the dial. And if we're going to move the dial, it's product that will move it. You can see here, this is a bit messy, this graph, and hard to see at the back of the room, I appreciate. But it's basically all of our top source markets that come to the Northern Territory. Up here, UK, 2005. Follow that line to where it is today. That's the youth market, the youth decline in action. Japan was really strong, and that has only come back in the last basically 18 months to 2 years, and predominantly to Uluru. We don't see much Japanese visitation anywhere else in the territory. The US has actually been quite good, steady, and we've seen significant increases in China over the last 18 months. Yes, Donghai has contributed to that, but it's not only Donghai. We're also seeing strong visitation coming in from the hubs of Sydney and Melbourne, and they are starting to the groups are starting to disperse. So there's some significant opportunity for us. Our traditional source markets are changing, yes. We've got to think about that in a product and experience perspective. By far and away, UK, US, our traditional source markets in Western Europe are really critical to us. But we will continue to drive what's going on in China and Japan as well. The other interesting part about our visitor mix, and I put this up as a bit of context for people, is domestic travel is typically split between holiday, visiting friends and relatives, business and other, which is transiting passengers, etc., a very minimal part of the economy, visitor economy. We struggle for VFR. Visiting friends and relatives is a really low percentage of our visitor mix. That's bread and butter for the other states and territories. We struggle because we've got a low population base, right? So whilst we're all sick of our relatives from down south coming up and filling up our houses in the dry season, the reality is we don't have much of that going on comparatively. So visitor numbers that's bread and butter stuff. For all the STOs, they don't really pay much attention to it, to be perfectly honest. So that drives a lot of visitation. We're still heavily exposed to business travel here. We've got to rebalance that. Because business travel, arguably, we can't influence. We can't influence whether Sea Dragon goes ahead or a spaceport goes ahead or another INPEX comes along. But it does, as Michael quite rightly said in his opening remarks, it absolutely impacts our industry because it sucks supply and it takes supply away from our leisure travellers, which is critically important. We are highly reliant on our holiday, only just marginally behind Tassie in terms of a mix. Anyway, that's enough of I wanted to give you a little bit of context before I jump into the strategy and explain what it means. So here's the strategy. You'll all get a copy of this wonderful booklet on your way out, which explains this in detail to you. So basically, it's split between 6 key priorities, which I'll go through in detail, and 4 pillars which underpin it: workforce development, marketing, collaboration, and industry development. And that all leads to a set of targets, which are, and we've been very clear around holiday visitation targets and total visitation targets. No longer are we having the one overall expenditure target of 2.2 billion. We are absolutely keeping ourselves accountable and our industry accountable and everyone on the journey with us around holiday visitation, because that's what moves the dial, and we know that. So the first one is investment. Everyone without doubt said we want greater levels of investment across our parks estate. We want greater levels of investment in attractions. We want new products, new experiences, and that's what this is aiming to deliver. In the coming months, you will see destination management planning activity come across at a regional level. So the Big Rivers region, East Arnhem region to start off with in the top ends, will be undergoing destination management planning activities. If you'd like more information about that, Mark Crummy, who's in the room somewhere today at the front here, Curl will be able to explain. He and his team is leading this work up here in the top ends. That will set a priority listing, basically, for private investment, for private facilitated investment, and also for government investment. So we need to deliver across a whole range of those activities. So the short term is we set the foundations with the DMPs. Then we secure these investments, and I fully expect we'll have 10 key projects that we are working to deliver with our industry partners. Now, don't think this is the big end of town either, right? This is basic things as well. Tourist visitor signage, for example, key and critical enabler in any destination. We need to get that right. This is helping our industry reinvest back into our industry through programs like VEEP, or encouraging the federal government in terms of their grant funding programs, or getting our banks and lending institutions more open to the fact of lending to and understanding about our industry and the seasonal nature of our industry, and opening up commercial finance opportunities for you all. That's investment. How do we know we're going to be successful in this space? We will monitor very tightly destination and visitor satisfaction. We will report back on that. And this is all of us together, right? We, at a regional level, we will be able to have, hopefully, an online dashboard which tells us at any one point in time how satisfied consumers are when they come through our gateway of Darwin up here, when they're out at East Arnhem, or when they're travelling through the Big Rivers region, for example. I should explain the template. You've probably all worked it out, but there's the goals sitting up the top, the priority actions in the middle, and our delivery partners and our outcomes down the bottom. But you'll again see that explained in writing to you. Aboriginal cultural experiences. Aboriginal cultural tourism is really, really important. Highly nuanced area. The Minister mentioned the Aboriginal Tourism Strategy, which will be coming out later this year. That underpins this work. If you walk down George Street, Sydney, and said to someone, what's an Aboriginal cultural tourism experience for you? They'd say, right, I'll go to the airport, I'll jump on a Jetstar plane, I'll get to Uluru, I'll run around the rock, I'll do Field of Light, I might do the Sound of Silence dinner, might visit the cultural centre, go home, tick. Right? I'm pretty sure most people in this room here would say that's not an Aboriginal cultural tourism experience. And our new consumers are absolutely telling us they want a more immersive experience. So we've got a wonderful culture to share and showcase. So this is not just working with Aboriginal businesses in a very supply-intensive way in terms of training and business support services, which a lot of this is focused on. It's also supporting partnerships. There is no reason why every business in the Northern Territory cannot celebrate Aboriginal culture, 65,000 years of living culture in their own businesses. So that's not, and there's a variety of ways that can be done through partnership approach, and that's what the Aboriginal Tourism Strategy in part will talk about. But make no mistake, this is really important, and it's something that our international consumers in particular are very much looking out for. The next is strategic marketing to grow the holiday market. Our new consumers are more connected. They are looking for immersive experiences. They're looking to connect with local communities. They are looking, localism is the big driver. The hotel which we are in today has a big drive. The Hilton brand as itself has a really big drive on immersing their customers in worldwide in their local communities, and it's something that obviously Hilton Group has decided that works very much for them, and that is a worldwide travel trend. People are coming to talk to you. They're coming to talk to us. They want to learn what it's like to live in the Northern Territory. We need to present, and we will present through the brand work that Tony shows us in a second, a really fresh, innovative way that we connect with our consumers, but then it's up to us, all of us together, to deliver on the brand promise. I won't talk too much about that section because that's Tony's area. We need to build and leverage events, both business events and leisure events. Events are time sensitive, critical. We need to build our event portfolio out into the shoulders and the low season. That's purely the reason why Tropical Light has been developed as an event. It is designed to trigger travel and provide another great way to visit here in our tropical summer. It's interesting, weather came up a lot here as a barrier to travel, and that came from us. It didn't so much come from our consumers, it came from us. We talked about the wet. We are like obsessed with the wet. It's interesting. Travel to Bali or travel to Singapore, no one talks about the wet, right? It's just wet, right? It's tropical. It is what it is. Difference is in a place like, it's not me, is it? Great. The difference is, particularly in Singapore, they have built their city and attractions around the weather, right? And it's exactly where we're going in terms of the CBD revitalisation here, and it's certainly a core component and element of the work that's going on in Nitmiluk National Park right now, that will hopefully be going on in Kakadu National Park shortly, and certainly across over at East Arnhem as well. So make no mistake, events are really critical. We need to get them out into the shoulders. We need to continue to create new events. We also need to support the existing event portfolio. We had a great discussion yesterday with our RTO partners and our chair around making sure that all of our event delivery partners realise they're part of the visitor economy, because they certainly are, right? And they just drive another vibrancy to us. Anyway, business events, key, critical. They will deliver significant volume, high value traveller. They will stay longer, they will spend more. I come from that world, I can talk for hours on that, but it is really, really critical that we look after our business event consumer and address the barriers around supply and products that we have in that market. And that work is very much prescribed in the long-term business event strategy. Access. Really important. We all know access is important. We all live here. We all know we are a long way from the southeastern hub of Australia. It's key and critical to what we do. But it's not just, sorry, Shane and Jill, it's not just about aeroplanes. It's also about cars. It's also about boats, cruise ships, and it's also about rail. 52% of our visitors get here by road, domestic visitors. Our self-drive market's worth over $1 billion to the industry. Really significant. Airline access, critical. We all know and we all feel the pain when the airline services stop. I live in Central Australia, and Dale, Stephen and I live through that on a yearly basis in and around that. It's important. It's the lifeblood of our towns and our communities. We get it. So what we need to do is maintain our existing access. We want to make sure that we make the existing access routes that we have into mainland China, into Singapore, into Bali, and then our domestic network, we want to make them bulletproof. We want to build demand. At the end of the day, the airlines, they just fly bits of metal around. It's very easy for them to divert their aircraft in and around. It's a lot harder for Marcus and Todd and the guys at Hilton to punch out a new hotel. So supply in this space is relatively easy to influence if you've got a significant demand coming in behind you. Rail, really important. We're going to do a drive strategy right now. We're out in market very shortly to deliver a drive strategy which hasn't been done for many, many years, recognising the $1 billion value of that market. Cruise activation. We saw here a couple of days ago, right? 3,500 people rang around the CBD. The effectiveness with our partners, Sam and the guys down at Waterfront and the guys at Darwin City Council and our RTO partners up here, it's critical. We've got to look after these passengers, these 85 to 100,000 passengers that come through here during our low season. It is absolutely important to us that we look after them well. The last one, and this is something I am very passionate about. This industry is really important. 1 in 8 jobs in the Northern Territory is created by this industry. We are worth $2.2 billion in terms of gross value add to the Northern Territory economy. Agriculture, fishing, forestry, cattle is worth about $750 million to the Northern Territory. We're 3 times that. So when we talk about jobs development and when we talk about the importance of our industry, we should be really loud and proud that we generate over 17,000 jobs for Northern Territorians. If we get all of this right in the strategy, we're going to create another 3,900 jobs. That's really important stuff, and something that we all need to get on the same hymn sheet with and sing from the top of the rooftops. I think Michael and the leadership of the board have been fantastic in starting well, not starting, so they've been delivering it for a while, this strong, cohesive message around how important our industry absolutely is. So we would love all of you on that journey with us. Okay, let's talk numbers. We put these numbers up. They're split between total domestic holiday, total international holiday. The numbers at the top are visitor targets. The numbers down the bottom are our expenditure targets. This is compound annual growth rate. Valerie and I, when we were running around doing the consultations, people were saying 4.1%, Scott, what are you doing? Compounds, people, compounds every year out to 2030, and I'll explain you'll see the effect of that. We've split this into time horizons because we know there's going to be peaks and troughs over the journey that we get to 2030. It's not going to be linear. We're forecasting what we can see. As Michael said, we're putting 3-year review mechanisms into this. We really want to be sure that we get our numbers right, because whatever we put in this document, we will be showing to investors, and we want to give investors certainty around what the future of this business looks like and this industry looks like. So that's split it up. So you can see here, holiday visitors at the top there goes to 900. It sits at the moment at about 906,000 people. Now that we've also put a bound in there, a lower bound and an upper bound, but that potentially will go up to around 1.5 million visitors, extra holiday visitors by 2030. Potentially another 600,000 holidaymakers coming here. Total visitors, that goes from a touch under 2 million total visitors up to 3 million. A potential total of 3. Potentially another 1 million visitors coming to the Northern Territory. That's significant. Expenditure goes from, in a holiday perspective, 1.1 out to $1.8 billion. Potentially $700 million of holiday expenditure being spent right here in the Northern Territory. From a total perspective, at $2.4 billion where we sit as at March 2019, which is the last figures that we have from Tourism Research Australia, that can potentially get to 3.6. That's 49% growth over the time. That is extremely significant. 3,900 new jobs could be created if we get this right. Graphically, it looks like this. Our board were very strong that we were to put a band in here, and the band starts after we've got financial certainty around turbocharging tourism for this year and next. That's why you see the dotted line solid, and then it starts to diverge. The upper bounds, which are the numbers I was just talking about, is funding certainty, and it's also making sure that all of us together deliver on the 2030 brand promise and the actions that are listed within here. So you can see the bottom line here is holiday visitation, and the top line is total visitation. Expenditure follows a similar path. But you can see that in much more detail here. These numbers have been tested backwards and forwards. We've spent a long time considering what the future is. Forecasting out to 2030 is extremely challenging. We don't know what, 10 years ago, IMPEX wasn't real. So, there will be market changes that occur. There'll be both opportunities and also challenges that come over that time horizon as we hit to 2030. But the best possible science has been used and the best possible sense checking has been used to make sure that these numbers stand up to priority and real and aspirational enough, but also achievable. As Michael quite rightly said, the 3-year review, we will be putting out an annual report card in the form of our annual report each year on this. But this is not just our strategy, this is also your strategy. You told us about all of this, you helped us with this. We really want to see you guys engaged in this strategy, and we'll be out to you in the coming months around implementation across industry of what 2030 could look like in your businesses. That's it for my presentation. I probably spoke a little bit too long. I'm happy to take questions now or after the seminar. I'll be around. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and I think you'd all appreciate there's been a mountain of work go into that. He tested the first presentation on me and it went for about a day and a half, so I think he's done an exceptional job to make it that much shorter, albeit we might tweak it a little bit more as the week goes on. Now, just when you thought you couldn't absorb any more detail, we're going to bring up Tony Cornby, the Executive General Manager of Marketing. He does a lot more song and dance, so it'll be a bit more energy. He wanted me to clap him on. I'm not going to, but I'm going to hand over to him and he'll take us through the brand work. Tony.
Thanks, Andrew. Oh. Turn the mic on. Is this on? Yep. Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to move around to keep you all a little bit more awake. I know I'm tail end Charlie, so I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, but obviously arts and crafts is quite important to what we do. So, tourism brand update. This is a project that's been underway for the last 12 months, but it formed two different parts. One is the brand. The brand is not something Tourism NT owns or controls. It is something you, as an industry, help develop. Our brand is what the tourism visitors experience. It's our wildlife, our landscapes, our hotels, our restaurants, our tours, our attractions. It's what they tell each other is the territory. That is our brand. Our brand is created by you for visitors, and it's what they experience. Our brand marketing is different. It's not in the minds of people. It is intangible things. It is what you see we produce as Tourism NT on a day-to-day basis. So you've got two different aspects, and that is what formed the brand project. The brand project was to look at how the brand has changed over the years, what we stand for, how visitors perceive us, as well as how our marketing reflects that brand to consumers. So they're the two distinct parts, but we'll talk about the strategic part, the brand to start with. There were 4 different elements we looked at with the brand. The first one is what the brand truth is. What's real about our brand? What do consumers actually experience, the positive and negatives to the territory, and then what do they tell others? Because that is the brand truth. We can't get away from it. That is what we stand for. So we had to investigate that. We also had to investigate the consumer truth. Now, the consumer truth is what the day-to-day visitors go through. It's what you go through on an average day. It's what affects your buying behaviour, what affects your motivations, what affects you to do what you do on a daily basis. That changes over time. We need to understand where the consumer sits now and where they're going to move to in the future. It's the same with the cultural truth. The cultural truth is a wider perspective. Where are we as a nation? Where is the globe heading to in terms of cultural? These are things like Brexit, the Trump effect, the trade war with China. This affects us, whether we like it or not. It does affect us. It trickles down. We need to know what's happening on a global and a national sense and how that's going to affect the tourism industry and us. And then the competitor truth. The competitor truth is how we're going to stay ahead of the pack. It's how we're going to reach the targets that Scott has just talked about. The competitor truth, the arts and crafts of the competitor truth, is worth, by 2025, $465 billion globally. Think about it, $465 billion on arts and crafts. It's a pretty big sector for the tourism industry. To put it in another way, Iceland's tourism is going skyrocketing right now. Their national spend for marketing in their tourism destination is 20% of their total. 20% of their federal, of their national spend goes towards marketing themselves as a tourism destination. That's how important it is, and that's what we're competing against. Billions and billions of dollars. So we have to make sure, if we can't compete with the billions and billions of dollars, that we stand out as a destination. We make sure that we are different in the eyes of consumers and they know why they should come. So they're the 4 aspects that we investigated. We also had to consider who are the major influences, who are the major partners that we have to work with. Obviously, the NT government, and underpinning that is the Boundless Possible brand. I'll talk to that a little more in a second. Tourism Australia, they're our brand partner globally. We have to work hand in hand with them because they lead in the markets that are our primary international markets. We have to swoop in and convert that information, that knowledge, that messaging into visitation. Then there's the trade, the airline partners, the online travel agents, the bricks and mortar travel agents, all the trade partners that we work in a day-to-day fashion. How do they work with us on a brand perspective? How do they reflect our brand to the consumers? And of course, yourselves, the tourism operators. We need to consider what you're telling people, how you're reflecting the brand, how we also work with you around our branding. Then, of course, media partners and the public. They influence what's being said about our brand, who says what to who, when. So we have to consider all of these partners. The 4 major objectives that we set ourselves when we set this project up was to align ourselves to the 2 key major partners. That's the NT government and Boundless Possible. It's also Tourism Australia. So we had them top of our list to align to. We also had to make sure the brand that we investigated, the brand that we stand for, our marketing must reflect that accurately. It must penetrate the messaging around all the competitive behaviour and differentiate ourselves in terms of our competitiveness. We have to be different if we're going to succeed. And of course, it has to motivate people. If it doesn't motivate people to visit, to find out more information, to actually spend money here, then the brand work won't have worked. So there are 4 objectives. When we first started off last year, around July last year, we extended the contract from the Royals Consortium. Now, the Royals were the agency behind the Boundless Possible work. What we did was extend their contract so they could take that work one step further. We then engaged 2 different brand agencies and a creative agency, which I'll go into a second. So, started off with our strategic agency, which was the Royals Consortium. That flowed on, as I said, from Boundless Possible. So we took all their information, all their knowledge about the NT from all the different industries, and we pulled out tourism as a subset. And we looked at that specifically. And of course, what we found was there was a lot of similarities. The similarities around what you experience in the NT from all those different other industries, all those different messages, and what you experience with the tourism, they overlap. Of course they overlap, it's the same place. But there are subtle differences, and those differences have to be reflected to the audience for tourism consumers if we are to motivate them for travel. So we took those differences as well as the similarities, and we made sure that the messaging would align to what Boundless Possible is putting out there. We build on Boundless Possible, we don't replace it. We make sure that the narratives are the same, that the work that's been done enhances what we're doing from a tourism perspective. So the 2 are strategically aligned. What we ended up with when we investigated the tourism as a subset of Boundless Possible was a positioning called Sense and Surreal. What it told us from a strategic point was people really felt connected spiritually, emotionally. They couldn't put it into words because it meant something that's not so practical, not so rational to them. It's a feeling you get when you came to the territory. This isn't us telling them what to feel, this is what they're telling us. So we know it was based on fact. And this was shown through all the different areas that we researched. So now we've got a positioning, we have to make sure, as I said, we align. We already know it's aligned to Boundless Possible because it was done off the back of that. But at the same time that we're doing our work, Tourism Australia was also doing some brand investigation. So they've got a a revitalised brand positioning coming out at the end of this year. So we had a sneak peek at that to find out how we align to that positioning. So Australians benefit from a holiday. They found that people feel more connected, more open-minded, their freedom to express, they let their guard down, more light-hearted. They found there's a benefit to a holiday in Australia. So what we did is overlapped our research and insights to find out how we aligned. What we found is we aligned exactly to what Tourism Australia found. So 2 different projects, done at 2 different times, found the exact same result. So we know that what we've actually investigated, all the different markets, all the different consumers, have told us Tourism Australia the same thing. So it's great to know that we're aligned both globally and both locally. Now we move on to, obviously, the creative department. So this is where we now have to reflect those brand findings in a way that sets us apart. And KWP, who have been appointed as our lead brand agency, which are in the room somewhere at the back there, Brent and Tristan, they took on that work, and their job was to distill the strategy down to some tangible areas that we could focus on from a creative point of view. So we developed an essence, as it were, and the essence formed 3 parts. It was freedom, people, and connection to country. So when we look at those, what we're talking about with freedom is our markets, all 12 markets that we interviewed, told us that a holiday to the territory allows you to be yourself. It's unpretentious. We can disconnect there. They're open to new experiences they never thought they would do when they get to the territory. And it allows them to be curious. I dare anybody to talk to a visitor here that says they're not surprised. They're not curious to find out more, because that's what they reflected in the research. The people, one of our strongest attributes in our tourism products is the people. We're seen as laid back, active, diverse, welcoming, real, and memorable. They take away their experiences with us, with you, and they tell their friends and relatives. And in connection to country, this is more than our Aboriginal history of the 65,000 years of living culture. This is about how people connect to the country nowadays, how it affects them. Visitors, Australians mainly, told us that when they come to the NT, they actually feel more Australian when they're here. They connect to the country in a way they never thought before. And that wasn't just locals, that was internationals as well. They felt this was part of Australia that they thought they were coming to experience when they went to Sydney, when they went to Melbourne. This is a part of the experience that they were surprised at. They connected to the country. So those are the 3 points that create the essence that allow us to create our new creative. But first of all, what we had to do was investigate how our current creative reflects the brand. Now we know what the brand was. What we did is looked at our 3 core brands, our domestic, our international, and our business events brand. We looked at how we sat amongst all our competitor states, and we looked at how we sat with our business events competitors. What we also looked at is all the different assets, so things like the logos, the straplines, all those assets, and we dissected them to find out what were the strengths, what were the weaknesses. One of the weaknesses we found with our logo setup was it was just too busy. When you look at other examples of how brands reflect themselves in logos, they can do it in a very simple way. We were just getting too many things trying to be communicated at the same time through one different asset, which was the logo. So that was one of the weaknesses that we wanted to try and conquer. One of the other weaknesses were we'd positioned ourselves very rationally. We had a job to do back in 2013, which was make sure people understood there was lots to do here. We're an immersive destination that people can really enjoy, get value for money out, because there's so much to do. So we were very rationally positioned. What we found through the brand research was that we were much more of a emotionally connected destination. So we had to place ourselves much further to the right than to the left. We also investigated not just the domestic brands, but our international competitors. We also investigated different design styles, what resonated with different people, what communicated different things to different people. So we did an in-depth research on all these different factors, and what we ended up with was 5 clear logo lockups that we could really delve into through all our 12 different markets. They were ranged from our original, which was through the NT, Australia's Outback, and the Convention Bureau, all the way through to a complete revolution, completely different lockup and brand logo assets. What we found out was what resonated most in different markets. In all the markets we tested, all the segments we tested domestically, locally, and through business events, we found out which ones resonated. But more than which ones resonated visually, what were people actually saying when they saw those brand assets? What were they reflecting back to us? And was it what our brand actually is nowadays, or was it something different? We had to make sure that what we talked about, or what they reflected back to us, were exactly what we wanted them to talk about. So we had all this information. Then we looked at each different element in that logo lockup. So fonts, colours, we had designs, all those different elements. We pulled them out and we looked at what they meant, what they reflected to the consumer. We looked at them, you know, in isolation, and we looked at them in situ, so with creatives. We tested different brand anchors or strap lines, taglines, whatever you want to call it. We tested lots of different variations, then we retested. Then we got the findings back and we retested. We made sure that what the consumers were reflecting to us made sense to them, and it was what we wanted them to talk about. What we ended up with is a whole range of information that we could distill, the polarising ones where some thought they were great, others didn't like, down to the ones that people thought they were great and the others thought they were still positive. So what we ended up with was a range of different logo assets and creative that everybody liked. Some thought they were the most amazing things they've seen, and others still thought very positively of. What that left us with was a brand mark like that, what we're calling the Sunset logo. A font, casual corporate font. It resonated with both corporate and your leisure visitors. And the brand anchor, different in every sense. I'll go into a bit more detail on these. So with our logo, what we found was it did its job. It really did make people understand what there was to do here. But there were lots of negatives that went with the positives. So what we had to do was strip out those negatives and make sure we got left with nothing but positives. So that's been done with the new logo lockups. The negatives have been addressed. It's been simplified. As I said, it was looking too busy, but it retains the equity. It retains the components that people already associate with the territory, and it contains the components that the Territorians feel emotionally connected to. So we retain that equity. In terms of how it's changed, we've dropped the do-the. The do-the was a very rational positioning, and it limited the creativity we could have. So we dropped that, and we also dropped the acronym, the NT. We've gone with the full spelling because it then actually tells people where we are if they don't already know the acronym. It also removes corruptibility out of that lockup. I won't go into any more detail on that one. With the international logo, we've removed the Outback from the logo because the Outback meant different things to different people. Some were positive, some were negative. But it meant different things. So what we did is removed it from the lockup. We'll still use it in our vernacular. The Outback is part of our DNA. It's who we are. So we'll use it in our creative, but we've removed it from the logo lockup. We'll still keep Australia as there, as you know, the positioning from our country point of view, and we'll also keep the map. Everybody loved the map. The map was a key component, and we've even made it pop out using the new colours. Then we get to the tagline, the brand anchor, different in every sense. Now we tried different versions of this. We distilled down words, sentences, and each time we looked at what was reflected back to us, what the consumers felt really encapsulated what we wanted to say in a very short, snappy way. So when we looked at it, it came top when we talked to our business events consumers. It came top when we talked about our over 35s, which, as Scott mentioned, is our core domestic leisure traveller. Territorians, it came top with when we interviewed them. And the Chinese thought it was the best thing since noodles. The other markets thought it was very positive as well, but it came top in all the core key markets that we interviewed. So we know we're on solid foundations, but did we meet our objectives? Does it reflect the brand that we know exists right now? Is it unique enough to stand out in a competitive environment? Does it motivate people to travel? And can you get behind it and use it in your businesses, in your everyday marketing of your own business? Well, we know we're on solid foundations. As we said, we've done 12 different markets to interview and distill the insights down. This has never been done in tourism NT documented history to this extent. Over 4,000 hours, over 550 people were interviewed. This is an extensive piece of work that's given us so much information that we can use to build on for the next 10 years and make sure our 2030 strategy is a success. We also have a creative now that puts to the forefront our strongest strengths. One of those is our people and the visitors themselves. People need to be at the forefront of our marketing. They need to know what they're going to experience on an emotional level. We're also going to make sure we differentiate to make sure our own experiences, our attractions, our activities are the things that makes us different from every other region. That has to be included in our creative. So our creative is going to focus on those three areas: freedom, connection to country, and people. We know as well, with the testing, we've shifted the dial. We've now gone from a more rational to an emotional positioning in terms of our brand assets. We build that emotion in on top of the rational areas that we've already created. So we don't lose that doing, that immersive activity. We build on it by building in emotion. We know from a business events point of view, it works with them, it resonates with them. In fact, one of the outcomes of the research was that Convention Bureau, from a naming point of view, was actually seen as outdated. So we've updated the name to business events. We'll go into more detail from that when they launch it early next year around AIM. In terms of motivating, is it going to motivate people? Well, one of the aspects that we did focus on was which imagery, what were the activities, what was the scenery that actually motivated people to want to find out more, wanted to book a holiday. All this information is in our bank now. All this information will help our marketing motivate people. We even looked at, from an international point of view, which sectors most resonated with people to motivate them to travel. So in terms of Japan, it was our wildlife. In terms of UK, it was our people. USA, it was the adventure. Each market has a different priority when it comes down to what will motivate them to travel to the NT. This all feeds into what our marketing actually is. So we know, as I've said, we've strategically aligned with the NT government through Boundless Possible and with Tourism Australia, both from a strategy and a creative. In terms of Boundless Possible, we know when talking to different audiences, we can have a different brand reflected with different messaging, but they enhance each other. They work in a symbiotic way. In terms of globally, it's the same deal. People will see Tourism Australia, and we work hand in hand with their positioning and their creative. In terms of a look and feel, with the orange sun on the purple sky, we work very much together creatively from a look and feel, even from a colour point of view. In terms of the actual creative itself, it's people-led. When Boundless Possible talks about the locals, the people that work, live and play here, they put people at the forefront. We're going to do the very same thing. It's about the people. Whether it's the local tourism operators, yourselves, or the visitors, they're going to be the forefront of our creative. So we know we work hand in hand locally. In terms of internationally, we know from the brand refresh that Tourism Australia is going to be doing later this year, they're very much aligned to how we're working creatively. People. It's about that unique experience, no matter where you are in Australia, that's going to lead their creative. So we're aligned strategically and creatively. How does that help you stand out from every other tourism business within Australia? That's what comes down to the nitty-gritty, okay? How can you use it in your marketing? We're developing a toolkit that will launch next week that will help you understand how your business fits within the wider branding, how your business can stand out amongst everybody else, how you can use different in every sense in your business. What is different about your business? And how are the senses activated when people experience your products? You can take it in different ways, but every experience uses different senses. So ask yourself, what is different about my business? What makes me different than our neighbour and somebody in Queensland or New South Wales? Why should people come, eat, stay, play with my business rather than somebody else's? That's what makes you different. And in terms of senses, when people experience my business, are they tasting something different? Are they seeing something different? Are they hearing something different from the guides and from the staff that they interact with? It's all relevant to your business when you dissect it down. And we'll have a toolkit to help you navigate through those different areas. Thanks. And thanks to KWP for the lovely positioning work. That's not the ad, that's just to show you a snapshot of how it's going to look, how we're going to encapsulate it. But starting from Sunday this week, our national campaign launches, which is the first viewing the public will have of the new brand creative. This will be not just a quick turnaround, this will be a 9 to 12 month exercise from us swapping out logo assets, both on a national and a global scale. And we'll do that over time, so it's not going to be immediate changeover of all logos and assets. You'll still see them out there for a little while as we get round to them over time. But the campaign does start this weekend, and we'll run through the different regions next week with the same presentation that we've done. That's really it from a brand point of view. As I've said, we've got a toolkit being developed and will hopefully be launched next week, but we're always available for you to contact us to talk you through how your businesses can benefit from this brand work. It works hand in hand with what Scott's been talking about in the 2030 strategy. As I said at the very start of this presentation, you are the brand owners. What you create, those experiences you create, both positive and negative, is what creates the brand. We merely reflect that brand back to the consumer, and hopefully that's what they pick up and they tell their neighbours. What we're proposing through the 2030 strategy, what you're responsible for, what we're responsible for, directly affects the brand work. So this is something that we all need to work together on, all need to get behind. And I can say with confidence, with the amount of work, the insights, the information we got behind this, we're on solid foundations as to what will hopefully shift the dial in the future for all tourism visitors. So I'll leave it from that point and open it up to questions from, I guess, myself, from anybody else here today. Do you want to take over to field any questions?
It's probably best I take over, I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, whilst there is the opportunity for questions, I'm just a little bit conscious of time. So what we're going to do was, because I know there's refreshments outside and everyone might be quite keen to just have a wet the whistle and have a little nibble. So we're all going to be here. And so both the Chairman, CEO, Scott, Tony, myself, the team from the RTOs, we're all here. So if you can break now, but before you do, I just wanted to take the time to thank our partners, so KWP, Deloitte, you've heard us speak of them. I'd like to thank the team at Tourism for all their hard work in the department, but more importantly, I'd like to thank all of you for engaging with us on this process. It's been a significant one. We've tried very hard to give you a snapshot of what that is without taking up a big portion of your time. So as you can appreciate, there's a lot more behind it. By all means, go straight to Tony or straight to Scott. You might have picked up there's a little bit of tension there between the industry development team and the marketing team. You're all laughing, I've got to put up with that daily. But they are really more joined than they've ever been, and I think that's going to get us some really great outcomes, and I think you've seen that today as those two pieces of work have talked to one another. So thank you for your time. Please grab us for questions, enjoy some light refreshments, and we look forward to meeting those 2030 targets and seeing this brand lead the way for us. Thank you very much.